Hello. Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. We have a delightful webinar on stripping and refinishing your wood interiors tonight. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently. We're trying to show, as Araceli, our speaker tonight, is going to be walking you through things. She's actually going to be able to show you things instead of show you a PowerPoint. So we were just working out some technical things on that side to make sure everything was going smoothly, and it's looking pretty great. So we're excited about that. You're going to learn the basics on how to bring wood interiors back to their glory by refinishing your woodwork. The focus will be on how to prep your walls, floors, and doorways before stripping your woodwork, removing your trim versus stripping it on site, and tips on how to strip and refinish your woodwork. So we have a lot to cover tonight. We are recording this as well, so you can go and look at this later on. Don't worry if you missed something or you didn't take notes. It's no problem. We have this right now on Facebook Live. We also are going to have it on our website and on Facebook, forever, basically. And if you signed up this evening, you're also going to get an email at the end of this where we'll have, a variety of things in that email, including a link to rewatch this. So no worries about that. Just to tell you a little bit about Araceli and Perez Wood Refinishing. Perez Wood Refinishing is a Chicago-based company serving both the city and suburbs with high-quality wood refinishing for projects both large and small. They're also an established vendor for the Chicago Bungalow Association and specialize in on-site stripping and refinishing with additional work done in-house at their shop. At Perez, they take great pride in their work, which is rooted in their love of wood, their commitment to workmanship, and their respect for their clients' preservation goals. Peter's a 25-year veteran of the wood industry. He's been refinishing wood for more than 23 years. Peter and his dedicated team have become experts at working with a variety of wood stains and finishes. Araceli is the face and voice of Perez Wood Refinishing. Her clear eye and careful assessments guarantee accurate estimates and beautiful results. Araceli is a longtime friend of ours. She's amazing. She used to do these in the libraries for us all the time. One time she was literally like 9 months pregnant and did one for us. She's pretty incredible. She's going to speak for about 45 minutes tonight. And then we're going to have around 15 minutes afterwards for questions. So please just wait until the end for questions. You can pop anything you want into the Q&A box down at the bottom of your screen. Please don't put anything in the chat. That's not what we're going to be looking at. So just go right to the Q&A box. And again, we should have about 15 minutes for questions. We have another webinar coming up also on May 23rd from 6 to 7. That's protecting your property for the future. So check that out as well. But if you want to go ahead and get started and introduce you formally to Araceli. So Araceli, whenever you're ready, feel free to pop on. Great. Yeah, we can see you well.
Can you hear me? Thank you. Thank you for hiring me again, Carla, and being willing to try this new tech app.
Absolutely. Thank you. We'll be here if you have any technical issues.
Yeah, next time we need to do it live.
Okay. Yeah, whenever you're ready then.
Okay. Well, perfect. Well, let's get started with the presentation on wood refinishing. Basically, Perez Wood Refinishing, we've been around since 2003. So that's 20 years already, and we take pride in that because it's something that we do every day. We love it, and so having these workshops, and just sharing what we do and what we love is just very, how should I say? I love it. It's very rewarding. And so we're going to start the stripping and the refinishing presentation. And the first step is to prepare. Sometimes I see people jumping in to the stripping part without properly prepping. So we want to make sure that you cover your walls, your floors, because you're working with a stripper, and as the stripper is going to strip your paint off, it will also strip your floors, and it will ruin your plaster. So you want to make sure that you take proper care of that. And I personally do like this blue tape. You can also use frog tape. The green one is very good. tape, or there's also a delicate one it's still blue, but the inner part is orange, and that's for delicate. And you want to use this tape. You also want to use plastic along your trim, and you can see on this door where we kind of have this, and this was only to show you the width that you want to use. Normally, you want to do 18, 20, 24 inches, because as you're stripping, as you're staining, you want to make sure that you have all that covered, and you don't want to splash your stain on your walls. So you want to start by using a whole layer of blue tape on your wall to hold this down. And on top of this, I do like using a layer of the regular masking tape, but you want the glue to go on first, because you don't want this masking tape directly on your wall for days. Correct? So this is basically the width that you want. 20, 24 inches is perfect. Once you prep all your walls, you prep your floors. If you have glass, you also want to protect your glass, because as you're stripping, this is actually a little glass one that we put in here for you. As you're stripping, you don't want to scratch the glass as you're stripping, sanding. The sandpaper could make awful scratches on it, so it's best to just make sure you protect it. You could do one layer of the tape, same thing, one layer of the tape and then your plastic, or you could do all of the tape without the plastic, depending on how big your glass is. Once you have that, you've prepped everything, then we're ready to move on to the fun part, which is actually the stripping. There's one more thing though. If you have doorways, if you're stripping a living room and there is no doors, and you have a doorway, you do want to make sure that you protect that doorway. You want to put some plastic up. Just if you do what is called a seawall, that works great. You put basically a plastic, 2 layers of plastic. One is tape on the top and the right. The second is tape on the top and the left. And that creates some sort of like a C doorway. And I'm putting my gloves on because I'm going to be telling you about the stripper now. For the stripper, what we're going to need is gloves. You always want to use long sleeves in case anything falls on your skin. You're protected by your clothing. The stripper that we're using now is the Smart Stripper. This is a heavy duty stripper, but it works best just because of all the federal regulations. We need to stick to certain materials, and well, that's what the law says. That's what we need to do. There's another stripper you can find everywhere, and it also works well. Pretty much everyone knows this. It's a citrus stripper. You can find this at Home Depot, Menards, Ace Hardware. Everybody has this one, and it works really well. The Smart Stripper normally you can get at Sharon Williams and JC Lick. Those are the 2 people you want to go for your stripper. So I'm gonna be doing a little presentation of how the stripper works. What you want to do is you want a disposable brush. This is just a 2-inch, probably 80-90 cent brush. And the reason why you want to use this cheap brush is because you're going to throw it out. After you're done with it, you can't use it for paint, you can't use it for anything. So you want to use something more on the disposable side. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you, this is actually a door that came from a bungalow, which is great because a lot of you probably have a very similar door. Either it's a door that has a hole, just one pane in the middle, or your doors might have 2 panes where there's another slat in the middle, or a two pane where it's one, then a slat here, and then another. Those normally were the bungalow style doors, and those basically were used anywhere from 1916 up to 1929. And that's how I know that this is from that time era. And if you can see, I'm doing a nice heavy coat of the stripper. You don't want to reserve the stripper and do a very light coat. You want to go a nice, abundant coat of the stripper. So it sits there, you let it work. What you want to do is 10, 15, 20 minutes later, you want to come first layer to continue to work. The biggest mistake I see people doing with the stripper is putting it on and taking it off too soon, because it could be something that can get you very impatient and you just want to see what's underneath. But that's a mistake because that's only going to take longer. The other mistake that I see, and what I would definitely avoid, is letting it dry for days, because then it's only going to get stronger and it's going to get harder to take out. So you want to work in small areas. You don't want to tackle the whole door all at once, because it's not gonna end up well, or it's just going to take you twice as long. You want to take small sections, and once this is all stripped, then you would move on to the next section. These little presses here, these take a long time to clean up, so you want to focus on everything, but take it in small sections so that you can strip everything fairly well. One thing I forgot to mention, that if you're stripping crown molding, runways, windows, or something that is, in this case I only did something that's low, but if you're doing something higher, or if you're doing a big project, you should always just use those. I'm not using them now because I have, this is a very small section, but you always should use the goggles. Once your stripper is on there, it's sat there for 15 minutes, you did your second coat, and it's just, you can start seeing where it just starts to wrinkle up, it starts to kind of alligator kind of paint. Then you can go ahead and, should probably lower my gloves for this. Then you can go ahead and start taking it off. And you want to do this as many times as you need to, just to get all of the paint off. You can see this has already loosened one layer of paint, and I'll get that later. One layer of paint, and then once that's done, then you need to do another coat. It could take 4, 5, 6 coats of stripper before you can actually get to the stain. In this case, on this door, we do see a little bit of pink coming through on the first layer of paint. What this tells me is that this is a red dye. The beginning of the century, they used dye stains, and that really got absorbed into the grain of the wood. And when that was the case, it was meant to stay on there forever, and it will stay on there forever. We've tried bleach, we've tried sanding, we've tried multiple processes, and then it's very hard to get it out, if you ever do get it out. And so if you do see this paint, I normally say avoid repainting the door, stain it, because there's a very high chance that the paint is going to continue to bleed through, even if the door is fully stripped. The only way to really stop that would be to use a shellac primer or a vinyl primer. Those are the only two materials that will stop the bleeding of the stain. So with that said about the stripping, we can continue on to the sanding, or cleaning. I think cleaning. You can clean raw wood, or the raw wood, with lacquer cleaner, mineral spirits. Now they've come with really nice materials that have barely any smell, if any. So the odorless mineral spirits will clean it well. You want to make sure that that gets fully washed. Some people also like using hot water, and that works just to get any grease that the stripper might have off the door, and then you'll have a nice raw material. I brought a piece of wood that's already stripped. It's actually oak, and it is actually 100 years old. It's a piece of baseboard. Also, it came off a bungalow that was built in the 20s. So this is basically what this door might look like if it was oak. If it was birch, because bungalows would have either birch or oak doors. If it was birch, then it would be a different grain and much darker, obviously, because of the penetrated stain that's already on there. And once I have all my wood stripped, all my wood is cleaned, then I can move on to the sanding. The sanding it's fun, it's messy, you're gonna get very dusty, so you wanna wear something that's very comfortable, things that you don't really care about, don't wear your nice clothes or expensive clothes. So that's for the sanding. I like to start off with a nice heavier grit, so like a 120, 80 grit, it's a very good start off for the sanding, especially if it's this harder like maple, birch, or oak. If you have something softer like pine or devil's fir, old growth pine, you want to make sure you use something a little softer. So maybe 180 and then finish it off with the 320. And the biggest thing I can tell you about the sanding is that you always sand with the grain. Whatever direction the grain is, that's where you want to sand. In this case, your door, this would be a vertical sanding, vertical, vertical, and then for the lower and the upper styles of the door, you want to go horizontal. Whatever the direction of the door, the grain is going, that's how you want to be sanding. This will prevent any scratches or marks. Even if you can't see them right away, when you start applying the stain, for sure you're going to be able to see it. So you want to make sure that you prep it, you sand it a couple of times. Normally I do like to do a heavier grit just to get it nice and clean, and then a smoother grit to have it nice and smooth and ready for stain. All the scratches by then will be gone, and then that will basically take us to a point where we can start cleaning for the stain. But to clean for stain, you can just use a regular cloth. We buy these, they're just cloths, cotton cloths. They come in boxes. They're called painter's rags, and you can buy these if you're doing a small project. I personally always tell people, just get one of your old white t-shirts, make it into pieces, and then you have something that you can use it. You gave it a second life, and you're saving money by not having to get a whole box of it. So you want to use this. You don't want to soak it, just kind of damp it a little bit to take off the dust off your wood. Or you could buy a tack cloth, which actually is the same effect that you would get from just a regular cloth. That's for the cleaning. And then we get to the fun process of picking stain colors. This could take days to get the right color. Normally what you want is you want to take a whole line. It could be Midwest, it could be Old Masters, it could be, I know now Home Depot has this new Valspar brand, and then there's also Bona, General Finishes. There's just so many out there. The most common one would probably be Midwest, and they have come a long way with colors. They have a nice selection that you can pick from. It could be anywhere from a natural to a reddish to a brownish, and now they have the grays. I'm not a big fan of gray and a bungalow. I'm a pretty traditional gal, but if that's what you like, this is your home, you're going to be looking at it all the time, so don't let anybody tell you otherwise or what colors to use. But some of the most traditional colors for bungalows are either natural finish, golden oak. It's also a very common color. Special walnut, that's a classic and one of my favorites, because special walnut and also, let me see if I can pull this out for you to show you. The English chestnut. These are just medium tone colors. There's plenty of brown in them. English chestnut has a tint of red, just enough to give it a little bit of warmth. And they're not too dark and they're not too light. So those are two of my personal favorites. And then there's Early American, which also, that's a classic. And the nice thing about these two colors is that they're classics, but they're still trendy. If you want to be trendy, that's probably what you'd want to take a look at. I don't know if we can see this on here, but this would be Special Walnut, English Chestnut, Early American, and then like I said, the natural. These would be most essential for a bungalow. This is what I see the most of, and those are colors that definitely are classics and will be trendy for years to come, just because they're just nice and subtle. Okay, when it comes to choosing what type of stain to use, depends on what type of wood you're working with, but if you're working with oak, in this case, this is oak and this is also oak. It's a much harder, very dense wood that can take basically pretty much any stain. You can use any stain base that you want, or but you want to make sure you test an area before you actually go in. Otherwise, if you use a dye or very fast drying product like a water base, you will get lots of blotches and inconsistencies because it dries within seconds and it'll dry before you can get to it. So you want to use something that's slower dry. I personally would suggest using an oil base. If this is your first time doing a project, an oil base could be a Minwax penetrating stain would be a good choice. The most basic and easiest product to use would be a wiping stain. Minwax does make a wiping stain, and also Old Masters. So those are good products to use. The wiping stain, this is one of the, this is what the can would look like. It's Old Masters wiping stain, and the nice thing about this is that the longer you leave it on your wood, the richer it will get. So if you just wanted a hint of just a brown, this is called cedar, but it kind of looks more like an early American color. You would wipe it right off, or you can let it sit there for 15 minutes, let it absorb whatever the wood doesn't need. It won't absorb it. You take off any excess. Once you've removed that, if you still think that you want a little darker, you can always do a second coat and do as many as you need to get the shape that you want, or you could always come back with a little darker stain over it, and it's still going to work well. Just make sure that you're letting these dry in between coats. Every manufacturer has different application times, so I would suggest you take a look at that too. This one says 5 to 15 minutes before you wipe it off. But then, because this is an oil base, it does need to cure, and that could be anywhere from 8 to 24 hours. Just wait for 24 hours. 24 hours will get you in a safe spot where if you come back with a different base finish, you're not going to get a smushed type of look. You want something that's nice and clear, and you can see your grain, and just want to pay off for all that work that you're going to put into the stripping. The one question I get asked quite a bit is how long should it take to strip a door? To strip a door could be a full day, it could be a full Saturday per side, depending on how many coats of the stripper you're doing before you're actually taking it off. It could take a full day, or it could take years. I've seen people take up to 15 years just to finish a project. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the one that gets it done in a weekend, put your door back up, and move on to the next project. Because bungalows, as we all might know, they always have something to work on. We owned a bungalow for 15 years, loved it. We brought all the wood back to its glory and added more wood that had been taken out, and it was worth every minute that we put into it. So this is something that's very important. The one thing I did want to share with you is it's this product. I dropped something. It's this product. This is called a pre-stain. A pre-stain basically is something you want to use if you're working with maple wood, oak wood, birch, something that is very porous, or the grain is just inconsistent. If you want consistency, you want to use this before you use your stain. Now, with this one, it's important to read the instructions before you go in. This one says, so it penetrates, you want to wait 5 to 15 minutes before wiping off. And then you want to do your staining in between that time and an hour. If you let it dry for longer than an hour, it's not going to do you much good, because that's just going to be a wasted step. You want to make sure that you're reading instructions from the manufacturer and that you're doing things in a timely manner, just so that you can always get the best results. So this is a pre-stain. It's by Minwax. In the other presentations we've done, I had not had this available to show you. I always told you about it, but I never showed you the actual can. It's red, it used to be yellow, it changed, presentation always changed, but you want to make sure that the name is always the same as the pre-stain, and that's what you want to use. It's actually wood conditioner. So this is something that you want to use if you're working with the softer or porous wood. Now let me just make sure I have enough time. Don't want to take too long here. That's that. Once you've chosen your color, once you've gone and this is exactly what you want, then you can go on to the ceiling. You want to make sure that you pick the right stain, the right finish for you. Finishes come in multiple shades. It could be something that's matte. That means it's not going to shine. It's just going to look pretty much like bare wood. You could do more of a satin finish. Satin finish basically tells you it has a little bit of sheen, but it's not overwhelming where, you know, it's a high gloss. That's a satin finish. I like that finish. It's one of our most popular finishes that we get asked for. And then there's the semi-gloss finish. Semi-gloss basically, it's, I don't know if you can see the sheen on this, but it has a little bit of sheen, but it's not a gloss finish, but there's enough where you know that it's a nice finished product. Those satin semi-gloss would probably say, I'd probably say are our most commonly used finishes in the city, especially for bungalows. And it's a matter of preference. You know, if you like a high gloss, there's also a high gloss. This is a product that you can find basically anywhere. This is indoor, outdoor, smart urethane. It is a water base. With the water base, you're going to have a quicker dry time. You're going to have less smell. Anything that is oil based, it's going to smell more. It's going to take longer to dry, and the oil base will enhance more of the natural richness in the wood. So if you want to stay away from the reds, you want to use a water base. If you like to enhance that umbering hue that the bungalows would have, then you want to stick to an oil base. With patience that you need to let it dry. Nowadays, many manufacturers have come out with different oils that are already stained. They're carbonized oils that you can put on without doing a stain, and those are wonderful. And the biggest thing I can tell you about those is that you need to make sure that you let those dry. You can only do a coat every 24 hours. That's basically the rule of thumb. It's every 24 hours. However, in the summer, if it's 80% humidity outside, you want to give that longer drying time, because it's probably not drying as fast. You want to give that 36, 48 hours before you recoat that. Same thing with the spar varnishes or anything that is oil based. You want to give it 24 hours before you do anything to it. And it will smell. I gotta tell you, the oil base will smell for up to 30 days, because that's how long it takes for it to fully dry, or not dry, but cure. So during those 30 days, it might still release some of the smell through the gas, and that's completely fine. It is normal. The more ventilation you have, the air circulation will help that smell go away. It's not a harsh smell. It's not something that it's going to kill you, but it is something that, if you're very sensitive, might get to you. But ventilation will do everything for that. So this is a good finish that you can get basically at any Home Depot. This is not what we use for most of our projects. We do use lacquers by Animal Camera, Mohawk, or General Finishes. They're just thinner finishes that we can spray on. These are thicker and harder to spray. We do spray our finishes because we like that smooth look, and it just gives you more of a professional look. But if you're doing something, this is your first time, you do not want to spend $2,000 for a sprayer. You can just get a small, good brush. You want to invest in a good brush. If you're going to get a brush for finish and you're going to do something, you're going to go through all the stripping, sanding, prepping, staining, you want to make sure that you're getting a good brush. This is an excellent brush because it comes in an angle, and it's 22 inches, meaning it gives you a nice control over what you're doing. And for example, this angle, if you were working on the door, this angle would be marvelous for getting into all these little grooves and creases on the door and that little corner. So this definitely is something that you want to invest in. This is a Corona, that's the brand. This is not a drain, this is a brush. So you want to make sure that you get the one with the angle. Again, something not too big. I've seen people getting patient, getting 3.5, 4-inch brushes. It will get the job done sooner, but I don't know that will be the best thing in terms of quality. So you want to have that control with this. There is something more I wanted to share with you, and this is a top-notch secret that all the finishers have, and if you're okay for me to share this with you. This is a Danish oil, it's just like linseed oil. We personally use this at least once a year around our house for touch-ups. It comes in different colors, it's really tinted, and it's natural oil. So basically all you do is you put a little bit of this in a cloth, you go around and you clean your wood with that. If you have little nicks, you could easily just kind of touch them up. This is more of a maintenance. After you finish your door, you've stained, you finished. But if in your case, like in my case, where I have 3 kids, 2 dogs, and most of the neighborhood kids are always here, then I need something like this where this will help me keep up with all the scratches and normal wear and use that a lot of our houses get. So this is a great product to keep around, even for the bottom of your kitchen cabinets, with the mop, with the vacuum, constantly nicking those cabinets. It's something to just kind of have around. And again, we personally only do once, twice a year, but at least once a year we go around and kind of touch everything up with this product, which is wonderful. It comes in different brands, but this is the one that we use. Also, Old Masters makes one, and I'm trying to think of the other name that I can't think of it now. Old English oil. It comes in natural, and it also comes carbonized. But that one only comes in this color, but this one comes in multiple. You can get cherry, any color that you want, they'll make it. And then Nancy was asking me, how can I tell what type of wood is in every, like what type of wood species I'm looking at. And I was telling her, it's hard to say at first, but for the most part, your bungalow is either going to have something like this. Can you show them this? It's going to have something like this, where it's nice tight grain. You can see where it's very dense. It's just very strong hardwood. This would be a oak wood, and once this is stained, it will look like that bigger chunky one I just showed you. Well, I want to show you the difference between an old piece of wood and a new piece of the oak. Here. This is new. This is new. This is old. These are both exactly the same wood species. Only one's new, one's old. As you can see, the new one is much lighter, and the grain might seem a little more separated, and it doesn't really determine. That doesn't really determine if it's new or old, but a lot of the times that you're able to see if the rings are smaller, most likely it's old growth wood, where this is probably something that there was planted and then it was fertilized and treated so the tree would grow faster, so that they could cut it go on to business, where old growth is very interesting because with the old pine, all of our bungalows have pine windows and pine frames on the outside. And the reason why we did that is because that old growth pine seals itself. And it can go 20, 30, 40 years exposed without rotting because naturally it will seal with the natural oils. And most of the bungalows were made like that. The trees, before they were cut, normally they were around 300 years old before they were even cut to make those windows. So if you're thinking of changing your windows, just think of the quality that you have, where if you change it with new wood, you probably have lesser quality. Unless your windows are not in your vinyl, then yeah, it's okay to sort of fix it. This is fine. This is this is closer to an old growth, but it's also more of a Douglas fir. It is softer. If I take my nail and scratch this, I will scratch it. I will dent it with just my nail. It is a softer wood. Normally, bungalows would have your back door with the glass on top and the 2 or 3 panes on the bottom would be this type of wood. Make sure you're taking good care of that because it is softer, but it's like nothing we can get now. It will dent, but if you take good care of it, it will be there for another 100 years. It was already there for 100 years and 100 more to come. So this is fine. And the other one I showed you is oak. Lots of bungalows have maple floors, many. 10 or 11 years ago, in a presentation I said, all of the bungalows I've done are maple floors in the kitchen. And this was probably about 10, 11 years ago. And I said 100% of those bungalows are this wood for the flooring. And sure enough, about 2-3 weeks later, I came to a bungalow, took out the tile, and it turned out to be pine flooring. So that proved me wrong. 99% of the bungalows have maple flooring if they're original. A lot of them have been replaced with oak flooring, and there's nothing wrong with that, but the most typical bungalow will have the maple flooring. And again, I've seen where there's the pine flooring, and then the birch woodwork. It's either wood birch or the oak woodwork, basically for that. I'm not sure if there's something else that I should be covering, but let me go ahead and take this off. Hopefully we see some wood behind here, otherwise it would probably be another 30 minutes before I can show you in, and then it would just be too long. But no, just another layer of the peat moss, and no wood yet. So again, it might be another 30 minutes before we actually get to see wood. We might not be able to before this is it's time to go. But I'll do another layer of the stripper just to see if everything's good. And on here, I don't think you can see on it, but on here we can see where that pinkish hue is bleeding through the paint, and that's just the dye that I was telling you about from the original stain that was put on there back in the early 1900s or 1920s. But yeah, that's what the stripper would look like. That's what the stain. I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing. Carla, is there anything that you want me to talk about?
I think we can get into Q&A if that's all right with you. We've got some good questions. I wondered though, I think I'm very loud when I'm talking and you're more quiet. Is it possible for you to go to the computer and talk directly into the computer for Q&A, just so people can hear you
Absolutely.
really clearly? Okay. I think that might be a little easier for folks to hear us. Okay, thank you. All right, just hold on one second, everybody.
All right. I can't see you, Carla.
Okay. Oh no, I can't see you either. Weird. Oh wait, yes, I can. I lied. Okay. You can't see. Oh, hang on. That's my fault. One moment. There we go. Okay, can you see me now?
Just 1 second here. I'm gonna mute this here real quick. There you are. Yes, I can see you now.
Okay. Oh, there's an echo though. Is there another thing we might be able to mute?
Let me see. Can you mute this? Yeah.
Oh, now you're muted now, Araceli. And I'm echoing.
All
Strange.
right. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, you're not echoing
Oh.
anymore, but there's a phone in front of your face.
I like phones.
Okay. All right, we're gonna get this.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody. This is a big experiment. We've been wanting to do this for a long time with Araceli, where you guys could actually see what she was doing while she was doing it. I know it was a little bit echoey in the warehouse, so we had some ideas on how we might be able to get that out next time, but it was pretty clear overall. But I know some folks had some questions too that they couldn't quite they didn't quite catch too. So but yeah, there's great questions. So let's get started on those. And thank you for that, Araceli. I know you were paving the way here, which is pretty great. Okay, are there any safety recommendations for using Smart Strip? If it gets on your gloves, will the strip chemicals burn through them? She remembers her father always warning her using BIX, chemicals and stuff because they were caustic. So just if you might be able to, if you could go over, actually in general, there was another question too about if you should wear respirators. If you could just speak a little bit in general about safety that way.
Oh yeah, of course. And I actually do have a mask here. Normally you're going to be doing this outside in your yard hopefully during the summer and outside. You should be fine. If you're doing it like in your garage or somewhere where it's enclosed, you do want to definitely wear a respirator. And I have one here that I can show you. It's actually pretty basic. And so that's always a good one. There's also the N95 ones, and everybody's familiar with those now after the pandemic.
Say, yeah. You don't really need to whip that out.
But this one here, I'm going to show you here. This is just a 3M disposable respirator, and it comes with 2 filters. This is a great product to have around if you're going to be doing stripping, especially if it's inside, like I said, in your garage. But for the most part, if you're doing it outside, the N95 would be fine. And now, I can't remember her name. She mentioned her dad, which was probably back before federal law came in about 9 years ago, where the manufacturers are very limited as to what products they can use. And the Smart Stripper, it's considered a green product. There is a smell to it, but it's not going to kill you. And then there's the citrus stripper. That's also, it's not something harsh. If it was 20 years ago, I would say you must use the respirator. But with all the regulations the manufacturers have nowadays, there's always a concern, but it's not something that we have to take to the extreme if we're outside.
Yeah, I know it's quite different now. Sorry about my cat getting in the frame here. Oh, and also gloves too. That was the other question about that. Is that sort of the same deal, or do you always wear gloves no matter what you're using?
Well, these are your pretty basic vinyl gloves. If you're going to be doing a big project, you want to use one of these, and then your regular working gloves. I do like these. I don't even know what the brand is, but there's a rubber on it, and they're elastic, so they're pretty well fitted onto your hand. and
Mhm.
this rubber really do last. You don't want to use just any gloves or just cloth gloves, because the stripper is going to get to you. So you want to make sure that it has that extra layer. In this case, the ones I was using, these have 3 layers. It has a cloth, they're elastic, and then there is some sort of plastic, and then there's that rubber for a nice grip. So I do suggest you always use your gloves, and otherwise your hands they could literally blister.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. If the wood is not painted, do you need to strip off the varnish?
You should, if you're changing the color. If you only want to do a maintenance coat and you love the color and you just want to basically give it a freshen up, you don't need to fully strip it. You can just do a light sanding with the second sandpaper ratio, the 320. You want to do a very light sanding, and then you can do a recoat. You do want to make sure that you clean it, because over years people touch it. There's oils there, there's we call them contaminants. There's just stuff on it. And if you're recoating something without fully stripping and there's a grease on it or glue, it will start to peel.
Mhm.
Just the new finish will just peel away. So you want to make sure that you degrease it, you clean it thoroughly with the mineral spirits, lacquer thinner before you coat it.
Okay. Thank you. Helpful. Does your team refinish windows inside and outside, or should I put vinyl on the outside of my window frame?
Good question. For the most part, exterior windows are painted, and there's a lot of people that will do a capping on the outside frame, but normally they would have been painted back in the day. I
Mhm.
have refinished outside of windows, but that's mainly for casement windows that open in with the nice stained glass, because as you open them, you want the wood to show on both sides. But it's not very common to strip both sides of the window. Normally, it's just the inside, and if we do strip the outside, it ends up getting repainted.
Yeah, or even just scraped and repainted. Oftentimes, I know folks do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just so people know too, like, why do we not paint on the inside, but we paint on the outside? Do you want to talk about that for a second?
For sure.
Yeah.
The varnish on the outside is always going to be more maintenance. If you had a window that was refinished, even with the exterior varnish, because of the extreme temperatures and weather that we have in Chicago, you would need to recoat it every 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on how much exposure it has.
Mhm.
Or if you don't do anything, you would have to refinish it in 10 years. And that's even with the exterior finish, where if it's painted, you don't have to worry about it for 15 to 20 years. So it's more of a maintenance thing. And it's a matter of preference. Again, we have refinished exterior windows, but it's not very common. And that's more of the maintenance issue
Mhm.
because of the temperatures and all the rain. And if you think about it, snow can sit on there for days before it melts
Yeah.
away. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that's
We
basic.
wouldn't do that
That's
on
the
your
biggest.
dining room table. You know what I mean? You'd be you'd be concerned. So yeah.
Yeah,
And I know the UV rays do a lot of damage. So
for sure.
um,
Yeah, and that's another thing. If you're using a varnish, it needs to be an exterior varnish because you need to have that UV protection. If you're using a random interior varnish on the outside, it's only going to be good for a year or two before it starts to wash away or just peel away, because it's not meant to be outside. It doesn't have the right chemicals for it.
mhm. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, okay, we have a couple of people with this issue. Our home has a lot of paint and paint splatter on the original wood trim and baseboards. Is there a recommendation for how to strip the paint without ruining the wood stain?
It's hard to do that, but it's definitely doable. And it also depends on what type of paint it is. If it was a latex or an oil base. Oil base is always going to be harder to take out. And the latex is going to be easier. And also depends on the age, how long it's been there, and with the condition of the finish. If the finish is in good condition, it might be easier. And there's different factors. How much exposure does it have to light? Were there smokers ever in the house? That will affect the quality of the finish. Even if it's the same age, it could be, if there were smokers, it's always going to get sticky and nasty if you try to clean it up. But normally glue gun would be a good source for cleaning.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good source. You just need to be patient. Sometimes people want to put it on, take it off 30 seconds later, and it doesn't work. It's not going to work. You want to let it, you want to give it a nice, I don't want to say soaked, because I don't want people to take the wrong impression, but you do want to give it a nice, what's the word I'm looking for? You want to just put a nice amount of it on there without letting it drip everywhere, of course, but you do want to like saturate it. That's the word. Saturate it, let it sit there for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then wipe it off. That will definitely work. But again, it's all coming down to doing it in sections and with lots of patience.
Yeah, I know you've always stressed that. Not my strong suit, but yeah.
That is my biggest tool when it comes to stripping and finishing. Just patience, and then you'll get it done. You just need to like give it time. Let the stripper, and I'll show you. Let the stripper do its thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
you can see where
now. It's all coming through, right?
It's all coming through. Yeah. So that's how. If I were to sit here and pick at it, it wouldn't do this. But you just gotta you need to trust the stripper to do what the stripper needs to do.
Okay. I'll try. What process do you use if the wood isn't painted but is either aged or been stained so that the stain colors no longer match? I know there's like people who had rugs down for years and they've got that discoloration in their floor. What do you do in a situation like that?
Normally, once it's stripped and sanded, you can get a nice even color. Most of the discoloration will actually be in the varnish and the stain and not so much the wood. There's cases where there is in the wood, but in that case, then you would just need to use 2 different stain colors, maybe a little darker for the lighter part. It's just one of those things where a lot of the times it's not as bad as it seems. Yeah.
After sanding, do you use water or a damp cloth to clean up the residue before staining? I read not to do that, but when you're sanding, dust is everywhere and it's hard not to use water to clean up.
You can, for sure. You just let it dry, for sure. Yeah. You don't want to soak it. You don't want to hose it down with the, you don't want to take it outside and use your hose on it.
Right, don't saturate.
But you can certainly use a cloth, a tack cloth, or just take a spray bottle, spray a cloth, and wipe it down. It will be better to do that than to leave all that dust on it. Because if you do leave dust and then you went in with the stain and that was still there, you will get little bumps and just awful bubbles on your finish, and it'll be worse than wetting it. So I'd rather you wet your wood, let it dry, than let it dusty. I imagine if you don't dry it, that's the problem. We only have a couple of minutes left, so let's see what we can get through. Could you talk about stripping paint that may contain lead? Yes. If your paint it's confirmed to have lead, you can't touch it. You need to have that abated. Well, as a homeowner, you probably could, but I can't do it. If it was already tested and it was confirmed by a lab that there is lead in it, it needs to be abated by a lead abatement company, which we don't do. I am certified to do it. We don't do it. But I am certified. I am licensed in the state to do it. But we just prefer not to. We just treat every product or every door as if it did have lead. So we just conceal everything. We take all the precautions, but again, if it's tested, we just don't. Lead is a misconception a lot of the times because lead is everywhere. When it's in a painted door, it's concealed by other layers of paint. Most likely this door was painted again and again after it was lead. And as long as it's not chipping off, there really isn't much risk. If it's on your door and your window and it's already little rectangle, tiny pieces that are coming off, then yeah, you want to make sure you get that attended. With lead, you always want to work wet, which is what we do. You don't want to sand paint that contains lead because then you're putting that lead onto the air. And so you want to work wet, even if you were in a enclosed place. Lead's not going to travel more than 6 feet because it's heavy and it will fall to the ground. Always use a HEPA vacuum. That's going to make sure that you collect all the dust. Do not sweep. If you're working in that situation, you do not sweep, you do not sand, and you do not scrape. Those are the 3 biggest things I can tell you. Always work wet, and everything needs to be concealed.
I knew somebody who had done this work, and a lot of the particles from sanding got into her clothes, and she was wearing the same clothes over and over just because she was being lazy and thought, these are my work clothes, I'll just get, and
you don't want to do that.
Poisoning as an adult doing that because it seeps in through your skin. I know. So yeah, thank you. I know a lot of people were curious. Okay. A person asked, they know it's hard to generalize, but roughly how much would it cost for a professional to strip and stain a door like the one that you were demonstrating on tonight?
These doors are between $600 and $650 per door. And that's for the stripping, sanding, staining, and finishing. So that's for the whole thing. We do have a pickup and delivery charge, which normally if we have more than 6 doors, I do waive the pickup and delivery fee. But yeah, it's $600 to $650 per door. And what's going to determine that is basically the amount of panels. The more panels you have, the more expensive the stripping is going to be because there's more time that's going to go into it.
Right. Okay. Do you have time for just a couple more?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, if you have time, I'm fine.
Yeah, I know we usually do a hard stop after an hour, but just to get through a few more of these because they're great questions. How do you fill in gouges so they match in color?
There's different techniques, and the most common old-fashioned one is where you take some of your same dust from the sanding, and you mix it with linseed oil, make a putty, and then put it in there. Or glue. You can take glue, mix it with the wood dust, the sanding dust, and make a putty. That's one solution. But fortunately now, Minwax has made different color putty stains. This is what it's called, wood putty, and it comes in like 20 different colors. Don't be afraid to buy a couple of colors that are very similar and mix them together, because they're completely compatible and they will mix. You're just gonna sit there and play with them like Play-Doh, mix it all the way, and then you can use these as your filler. You just wanna make sure that you're testing this before you do it every single hole. If you do white, then it will be hard to stain it because a lot of these do not take the stain. A lot of the fillers do not take a stain. So you wanna make sure that you start off with the right color to begin with.
Great. Okay. And then 3 people were curious about this one. So any advantages or disadvantages to removing trim to strip it versus stripping it on site?
Oh, this is a good one. I didn't talk about this. Normally I do suggest taking off trim if you have drywall, or if you're already going to plaster the wall or drywall the wall, it's okay. If you're not planning on doing any plaster work or re-drywalling the walls, then you want to keep it on, because these pieces of wood are on nails that are 2 inches. And there's a high risk of cracking plaster as you're taking it off. Normally I do prefer to keep it on unless it's a complete demo and all the plaster walls are going. Then yeah, I would say go ahead and remove it. Otherwise, keep it on. It'll probably, in my opinion, it is easier, because then you don't need to worry about covering all the nail holes all over again and making sure all the pieces fit together. In my opinion, that's my personal opinion, it is better to keep it on. But again, if you're doing a full renovation, it's okay to take out. Gotcha. And another thing too is, as you're taking it off, because of the size of the nails, it's not only the plaster, you're taking a 50-50 chance in breaking, cracking, or denting the wood.
Yeah. steps or advice on stripping, sanding, prep, and painting exterior wood stairs and front deck. I guess the audio was bad to hear. It's kind of a broad, so it's kind of a big question. I feel like so. Yeah, I'm not sure that we can break all that down again. Just to remind folks that we are sending this out. We are going to send all this out. It was just a little bit, not like super echoey as much as just kind of sounded like you were in a warehouse. So there are parts we might be able to clean up on our side too, to make it even a little bit more clear for people before we send it out. But one more than I think that would be good to take, because I know this has come up a million times in the past, but what do you think of the infrared paint strippers?
I'm trying to think for a good answer on that. Everybody uses different products, and I'd probably say if it's working for you, or if you want to give it a try. I mean, I personally prefer like I said, like the paste and stuff. The only stripper that I really dislike, it's the peel away. And that's because if you leave it on there for too long and you cover it, it will burn your wood because it takes the minerals away and it will leave burn marks on it. So the only stripper I will ever be against would be the peel away.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, maybe we'll end on one other one. Are there any additional resources, any books or anything you would recommend that you found really helpful over the years? I know it's hard to doing this so long, so like trial and error, zero.
Yeah, long time ago, I don't know if they still make it, but old masters used to make a book step by step on how to do the stripping, because they used to carry all the products. Now their biggest focus is in stains and finishes, so they might not have this book. We do have this presentation available, or I wasn't reading off of it this time because I was more focused on using the materials. But if you are interested, I could have Nancy send over the presentation to you. You could read through it. There is
wonderful. Yeah, we could put that in the email as well when we send it out in like a PDF form for folks too.
Yeah, that would,
Great,
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, we can get that to you. And then this way they'll read step by step. The different grids, the different materials are listed on there. And this might be something that might be helpful to them.
Yeah, also to Jahaira Ruiz, who was, wanted a little bit more of a breakdown because they missed it the first round. So thank you. That's really helpful. We do have to wrap up now. But if there's any like super burning questions, we might be able to pass them along as well to Araceli. If you didn't get yours answered tonight, it's always that everybody at the last second like dumps 20 questions in. So I'm always like, I thought we were going to finish them all. But Araceli, thank you so much. Again, thank you for being the lab rat and doing this wonderful presentation in the warehouse too. It was cool to be able to see you actually doing the things for a change. So that was wonderful. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you again soon for something else we wrangle you into. But thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys always for having us. And it's always a pleasure working with you all.
Yeah, you too. You're the best. All right, everybody have a wonderful evening. Thanks for joining us tonight, and look for that email with the presentation and a link to this presentation, to the video presentation as well. All right, good night.
Good night.